webinars to update and introduce some more detail on both how things are proceeding and then also for the next steps, just in terms of the process, procedure, and really to give all of you an opportunity to ask questions. So I'm Andy Deacon, Director of Strategy and Operations in the Global Covenant of Mayors Secretariat team based in Brussels, and have been working with both World Bank and EIB-GIZ and a number, and all of the other partners in the City Climate Finance Gap Fund for a year or so now to both get us through launch and to this stage. I'm joined this afternoon by my still relatively new colleague Asma Gina, who is then also working with the GCOM Secretariat team to support Gap Fund activity, and will be assisting this afternoon by helping with the chat and the question and answer session as part of this webinar. Really important to make sure that you understand then how to operate the various systems during the meeting. So in terms of the technical things for Zoom, just to set out a few key points as we get going, you won't be able to unmute yourselves. So everybody's joined as a participant. So you won't be able to unmute or to speak. There are interpretation options that are available in Spanish and Portuguese, and you can access these through the interpretation button that's then located at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side. And if there are any questions, then please use the chat function to send those to the team. You can submit those questions in English, Spanish, or Portuguese, and we'll be working to translate those and make sure that a member of the team is available to then pick those up. If you're having any technical difficulties, then you can private message Yuna Chun or Duru Oxus using the chat function, and they are also available to assist with any technical difficulties that you might be having on the way through. So I'll hand over in a moment to then partners from the key implementing agencies from World Bank and EIB-GIZ. But first of all, just also wanted to thank and to acknowledge the support that we've had from a number of City Network and other partners in order to make this series of webinars available and to promote this important opportunity. So my thanks go to colleagues from C40, from ICLEI, from across the GCOM partner network, from the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance also. And thank you for all of the work that everybody's done to raise awareness of this opportunity, as well as to World Bank, European Investment Bank, GIZ colleagues, and of course, thanks overall to the donors that have made the fund possible and all of this activity possible at all. And you'll hear a little bit more about how all of that's coming together. So having said all of that and helped to get us up and running, I'll hand you over to the team who will now take you through the rest of the presentation to set out some of the detail on the GAP Fund. Over to you.
Hello, thank you very much, Andy, for the introduction. My name is Giulia Macagno, and I work at the EIB in the Urban Advisory Division. And today I will be talking to you about the GAP Fund. Just very briefly about me, I had the EIB-GIZ part of the Technical Secretariat. So I will be sharing this presentation with my colleague from the World Bank side, Augustin Maria, and we will be trying to address as much as possible all your questions concerning the City Climate Finance Gap Fund. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the first bit of the presentation is indeed to try to get you through the message about what is the GAP Fund, why do we need the GAP Fund, and what is the GAP. So we all know that climate investment needs over the next few years, over the next decade actually, are particularly significant. And by climate investment needs, I mean both investment in low carbon infrastructure, but also investment in resilient infrastructure. So there are estimates that put this figure about the needs for climate investment at about 93 trillion US dollars from now to 2030. And we also know that out of that amount, between 3 to 5% on average is needed for project preparation. This percentage increases up to 10% in emerging markets and low and middle income countries. So everybody is aware of the fact that without proper project preparation, the projects who may be good, may be extremely ambitious in terms of their climate impact, cannot materialize. We also know that the World Bank, the EIB, other MDBs, and also national governments and private actors are increasing their climate commitments, and there is a widespread movement towards increasing their investment in low carbon and resilient infrastructure. However, there is a gap, and there are a lot of projects that do not necessarily move forward from the project idea to the financing and implementation. We know that investors are there and there is capital ready to be invested in urban climate projects. And we know that demand is there because cities constantly show that there is a need for investment in this type of infrastructure and for identifying suitable financing solutions. Finally, we know that some project preparation facilities exist in different geographies. However, it is true that the project preparation facilities that exist are not necessarily focusing on the early stages of project preparation. And this is where we have identified a clear gap in what is available to cities as of today. And this is in particular the focus of the City Climate Finance Gap Fund, to help bridge this gap and increase the number of projects that will go from conception to implementation. Next slide, please. So here we have tried to provide a very schematic overview of what the project development cycle is. So we start from planning and development of a strategy. In our case, let's talk about strategies at the city level or at the regional level. Then there is the stage of project definition, the pre-feasibility stage. And then the project becomes more mature, and it is taken then to full feasibility studies, to financial structuring, procurement, and full preparation. Later on, again, there is investment and the actual implementation of the project. So we have found, together with the partners and with the donors, that the clear gap and the part for which the current offer to cities is not yet sufficiently developed concerns these first two elements, these first two stages of the project development cycle. So this is really the scope of the activities of the GAP Fund. So we can go to the next slide, please. So yeah, exactly. In this session, I think what is important is to give you a very brief overview of what and how the GAP Fund is working and what type of support it can provide. So we focus on cities because cities are central in order to meet the Paris Agreement targets. However, we are also aware that cities, particularly in low and middle income countries, often have difficulties in developing climate-friendly and resilient infrastructure because of capacity and because of financing. But at this stage, what we are interested in is really the capacity to develop the project. So what does the GAP Fund do? The GAP Fund provides support to cities with technical assistance, so helping them prepare the projects. And we are focusing on both climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation projects. And as well, I will explain in more detail later on, we focus on the early stage of the project preparation cycle. Who is involved? A lot of actors, starting with the donors. For the time being, we have the German government and the Luxembourgish government contributing to the fund. Then you have multilateral banks, so in particular, the European Investment Bank and the World Bank. And then the European Investment Bank, as I will tell you more about in a minute, works closely with the German Cooperation Agency, GIZ. And as Andy was rightly saying in his introduction, the city networks and other partners are extremely important in facilitating the success of the GAP Fund because they have very strong hold on the ground and they know the cities. So we, as the GAP Fund team, we are definitely relying very much on their help and support. We have created a dedicated website, the citygapfund.org, where cities and local authorities or other interested parties can check eligibility criteria, can find examples of projects that the GAP Fund can support, and also they can request support. There is a specific button on the website that is called Apply for Support. And it leads to a page where we have our expression of interest form. The expression of interest is available in 3 languages for the time being, in English, in French, and Spanish. And it can be downloaded and filled in and re-uploaded again on the same page of the website. Next slide, please. So now I think it's important to provide an overview of what the GAP Fund can offer in terms of support. As you see from this slide, the support of the GAP Fund is quite wide, and also this is not necessarily an exhaustive list. This is the list of the main activities that we are thinking the GAP Fund will provide, but of course each expression of interest is evaluated separately, and the exact nature of the services to be provided by the GAP Fund are evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So the GAP Fund can offer support to develop strategies or to analyze the climate potential of existing or future plans and strategies or investment programs. It can provide capacity building for the development of low carbon and climate resilient urban projects. And it can also support the prioritization of investments that are part of a climate strategy or an investment program developed by the city. Further on along the project cycle, so when we come to the pre-feasibility stage, the GAP Fund can provide support in defining the project concept, in preparing pre-feasibility studies or part of pre-feasibility studies, depending on what the city has already developed on its own. And then it can support the definition of an appropriate financial structuring, which of course depends on the nature of the project. It can provide support in identifying additional sources of project preparation assistance through what we call the matchmaking activities of the GAP Fund with other project preparation facilities that already exist. And it can also offer support to fill in other gaps in the project preparation cycle in the other gaps that are not clearly listed on this slide. As I was saying, everything is tailor-made and depends on the needs of the specific project. Next slide, please. So now, very quickly, because you can find this information, of course, on the EIB, on the GAP Fund website, but it is important to clarify the eligibility criteria. So we are talking about projects developed in cities in low and middle income countries that are listed in the OECD DAC list that is publicly available on the OECD website. We are talking about both climate mitigation and climate adaptation projects. And you can also have, of course, a project that has both mitigation and adaptation aspects to it. Then another important eligibility criteria is the urban dimension. And I think we should spend a little bit of time just to clarify what this means, because we say that the project must be situated in an urban area or functionally linked to an urban area. Just to give you an example, a recycling center that is located maybe just outside the city boundaries, but it clearly serves a specific cities or maybe neighboring municipalities, that would be considered as an urban project. On the other hand, if you have a renewable energy plant that is located just outside the city, so in the same geographical location as the project I was mentioning before, but the electricity produced from that plant feeds into the grid, so it's not directly consumed by the city, it's not linked functionally to the city. There, it would be more difficult to demonstrate the urban dimension of the project. And as I was saying before, we are talking about early stages of climate investment planning and project preparation. So going from the stage of the strategy development to the project definition and concept definition to pre-feasibility stage. Now, in terms of the sectors that are eligible, as you can see from the slide, there are quite a variety of sectors that are considered eligible for the GAP Fund. And they go from urban mobility to energy efficiency in buildings. Also, particularly in the case of affordable housing with an energy efficient approach. They include solid waste management, water and wastewater management, the greening of urban areas, circular economy approaches, and also multi-sector or area-based investment programs, because we know that cities often have a multi-sector investment plan that covers all the priorities of the city. So as long as we can find a coherence in this, and it is clear that the main motivation of the set of investment is climate mitigation or adaptation, then those projects would be eligible for the GAP Fund. Next slide, please. So this is a very important point, the fact that the GAP Fund is one initiative. We talk about the One GAP Fund approach. As we have said before, we have different partners that are involved in its implementation. In particular, the World Bank and the European Investment Bank working in close collaboration with the German Cooperation Agency. And we have partners that, as we were saying before, are essential in achieving the GAP Fund's objectives, like GECOM, C40, ICLEI, and the CCFLA. What I wanted to say as well is how the GAP Fund is structured. So it is one initiative, but indeed it is composed of two multi-donor trust funds. One managed by the World Bank and one managed by the EIB. And in the case of the EIB has a joint technical secretariat together with GIZ. And so we will be assessing the projects, and after that, the projects that have been selected will receive technical assistance. So I think I'm concluded on this stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Giulia. So I'm Augustin Maria. I'm the program manager for the World Bank Gap Fund. And in this second part of the presentation, I'll provide you some information on how the Gap Fund is functioning and some useful resources that would help you think about a potential application for the for Gap Fund support. So what happens right now when a expression of interest is submitted through the website is that both the World Bank and EIB team receive the the application. We meet together and we review and confirm whether the application meets the criteria for eligibility that Giulia just described in the previous slide. If the EOI, the application is determined to be not eligible, we will send you a response explaining the reasons for non-eligibility and providing you some advice potentially to revise the application. If the application is confirmed to be eligible, we will respond with some initial feedback, and we will request some meeting to go over the application with you, confirm the eligibility and the type of support that is requested, and we will work with you to define in more details the scope of the technical assistance. When the technical assistance is fully defined and approved either by the World Bank Trust Fund or the EIB Trust Fund, the technical assistance will be implemented either by the World Bank or EIB in partnership with GIZ. And this is an important clarification. The GAP Fund does not give grants to the city. The technical assistance is providing directly by the implementing agency, so either the World Bank or EIB in partnership with GIZ. So far we have started receiving expressions of interest from cities from all the regions that are covered by the GAP Fund. In total, we have received more than 90 expressions of interest. Quite a lot of them have come from Sub-Saharan Africa, but you can see that cities in Latin America as well have submitted quite a few requests already, and also in Middle East, North Africa, Asia, and South Asia. Out of the 90 or so expressions of interest that have been received so far, 40 have been considered eligible. We are following up with 22 other applicants to confirm whether the application is eligible, and 29 were considered not eligible. So a few tips based on the proposals that we have received so far that would be useful for you to take into account to make sure that when you submit a application, it can be considered eligible. So first, on who the applicant is, it's important to make sure that it is clear who the applicant is and what the relationship with the city administration or local authorities is. So what you want to avoid is an expression of interest that is submitted by an individual where we are not clear whether this individual is related directly to city administration or another eligible applicant. When in terms of content of the application, please make sure that you emphasize the climate focus and that this climate focus comes out clearly from the description of the support that you're requesting from the GAP Fund. if possible, try to give a sense of what would be the scale of the climate impact of the proposal. The GAP fund has limited resources, and there are issues in terms of economies of scale if we support very small scale, large number of very small scale projects. So we are always going to prioritize proposal where we can see impact at scale. It's also important to present the potential co-benefits of the interventions beyond the climate focus. In general, what we see is that some of the applications that were not considered eligible did not display a clear link to climate issues. So, for example, if you submit a proposal to improve water supply in your city without explaining what are the specific challenges related to climate change that you want to address, this might not be considered eligible. And finally, in types, it's important to make it easy for us to understand what is the specific support that you are requesting from the GAP fund. As Julia presented earlier, the GAP fund support is really focused on the early stage of project preparation. Sometimes we see general description of the projects, but it's not clear whether the applicant is requesting support for the project concept, for the pre-feasibility study, or if the applicant is rather expecting financing on the project. So whenever you submit an expression of interest, please make sure that you identify specifically the type of support that is expected from the GAP fund. So we do have a very useful section on frequently asked questions on the GAP fund website, and we'll come back to it later. These are a few questions that we have seen based on the early interactions with GAP fund applicants. And there were questions on, for example, whether NGOs or associations are eligible to receive GAP fund support. The answer is no, unless the NGO or the association is really applying on behalf of the city, and we will request written documentation of the city support for the application. The question comes often whether the GAP fund can provide financing for project implementation. And so as I mentioned earlier, no, the GAP fund does not provide financing for project implementation, only early stage project preparation. There were many questions, so whether the GAP fund could recruit consultants. Often we have applicants sending expressions of interest, expecting the GAP fund to finance their work on a specific project. And as we mentioned earlier, any technical assistance that is provided by the GAP fund will be provided directly by the World Bank and EIB GIZ team. So there is no financing coming to the applicant, only the technical assistance. There have been questions on whether cities and local authorities can share the financial support they received with NGOs, associations. So as we said, there is no financial support coming to the cities or to any other actors. So again, the answer is no. And last question, can a public body present an expression of interest on behalf of several smaller municipalities? And yes, this is possible. And as I mentioned, we are looking for some climate impact at scale. So actually bringing together initiatives from different cities can be a good way to achieve this, as long as there is a clear ownership at the city level. We cannot support an activity where cities are not really aware that they are receiving this this support. Now, here we are going to try and provide you some examples of projects that could receive GAP fund support, and this is based on the the first batch of expressions of interest that we have received. And so we are going to provide you 4 examples, but don't take these as strict categories, only examples to maybe inspire you when you think about your application to the GAP fund. So on the what we call the upstream side, so at the more at the strategy level, the GAP fund can, for example, help you prepare a city climate action plan if you have not already done it. This can include, greenhouse gas emissions inventory, climate risk assessment, scenario planning, and identification and prioritization of actions to improve the city's low carbon development potential, or improve the city's resilience to climate change. And beyond the climate action plan, we can also the GAP fund can also help your city develop climate smart capital investment planning. Another type of activity, upstream activity that can be supported, is the development of climate smart design guidelines that can help mainstream a low carbon strategy into urban development. And so the type of technical assistance that can be provided in this case could include the development of standards for sustainable and green urban planning, or for example, the identification of incentives to developers to adopt green building labels in residential buildings. If we move to more downstream examples, so at the project level, so for example, projects such as sustainable urban transport systems using electric buses can be supported at the early stage preparation level. This can include preliminary analysis of alternative electric fleet options, demand studies, the development of business plans, and the analysis of financing options. If you have in mind projects that would promote urban green areas and nature-based solutions, the type of technical assistance that can be supported could include preliminary cost-benefit analysis or climate risk and vulnerability assessment for the area where you want to work. Again, those are not rigid categories, just examples of projects that could be supported. Now, in the last part of this presentation, we just wanted to provide you some examples of resources that you can use and that you can find on the GAP fund website, and you can use. While I finish this presentation, just a quick reminder to please post any questions that you would have on the chat. As soon as I finish this presentation, we will go to the Q&A session, and we hope to really have an interactive session. So moving to the last part of the presentation. So we have, as Julia mentioned earlier, we have a website that you can access at citygapfund.org. There is most of the information that we presented to you, so a description of the type of technical assistance that the GAP fund offers, the criteria for eligibility. We are starting the implementation phase now, but we hope to populate the website with stories from other cities, and we hope that you can find some inspiration on this. We will have a section on news and events, a section on the frequently asked questions, a knowledge hub, and of course the contact and as Julia mentioned, the possibility for you to apply for support by downloading the form that we have available in 3 languages, and then submitting this form through the website. I wanted to insist again on this section on the frequently asked questions. This is a particularly useful section for cities that are preparing an expressions of interest. So we really invite you to have a look at this section when you think about applying for the GAP fund. If you have any specific queries that are not answered in this question, the website also has a contact, and if you can post your query, and both the World Bank and EIB teams will receive this and will reply to you as soon as possible. We also have this section on the Knowledge Hub, where we try to bring together resources that can help you think through the project that you would like to apply for. And this includes some documents from the World Bank and EIB, but also our different partners that we mentioned, CCFLA, GCOM, ICLEI, and C40. So, for example, to display a few useful resources from our partners, CCFLA has developed a Green City Finance Directory, which includes the reference and some information on project preparation facilities that could potentially support your project after the early stage preparation that the GAP fund could support. And if you already have projects that are mature enough, you can use this Green City Finance Directory to identify project preparation facility that could take your project to the financing stage. C40 has also a very rich knowledge hub that we encourage you to consult, and that we will link to from the GAP fund website. There is in particular a climate action planning resource center. So if you're thinking of requesting support to prepare your climate action plan, you can find a lot of resource here on the tools available and the different steps that you need to go through when you want to develop your city climate action plan. And finally, from ICLEI, we would like to mention the Transformative Actions Program, which also includes an important resource center on everything that has to do with climate finance. And I think that concludes this presentation. Thank you very much, and we will move to the Q&A session. Asma, over to you.
Thanks, Augustin. So we've had a few questions come in, which I will share with you now. The first, I guess, is whether or not there's a deadline for the expressions of interest.
Should I start?
So
Yeah, go ahead. No, Augustin, go ahead.
So no, there is no deadline. The GAP fund, the application is open anytime. We meet between the World Bank and EIB every 2 weeks to review the application. So whenever you submit an application, you can know that we will review it in less than 2 weeks, and we will hope to respond to you shortly after that. So hopefully you should hear back from us in about a month.
Great, thank you. And then, are these investment funds non-refundable grants, or are they interest loans?
Yeah, so maybe I can take this one. So it is indeed an important question. The technical assistance is a grant, so it is non-refundable. However, I think it's important to stress, as Augustin said during the presentation, that indeed this is not financing for the implementation of the project itself. That may come later if all the preparation is successful, and it may come by the EIB, by the World Bank, or other IFIs, but that has specific and separate conditions that will be discussed separately when we get there. But just for the technical assistance, yes, it is a grant. It's not a loan. Thank you.
Indeed, that's a very important clarification. Thank you. The next question, I guess we could take it in turns, but I'll read it out for the moment. What's the characteristic of the applicant? So mayor, governor, other entities can submit expressions of interest. How can a public university participate in the GAP Fund?
So maybe I can take this one quickly. So we expect anyone who applies to apply on behalf of a city. So the type of authority that can represent the city will vary from country to country. So on this, we don't have a strict rule that it has to be either the mayor or a governor. As long as we can see that a competent authority from the city is behind the application, that is fine. And as we mentioned, different types of institutions can apply on behalf of the city, but the city needs to be aware and it needs to support the application. So if a university from a certain city is proposing some work, this is fine as long as they have a clear letter of support from, let's say, the mayor of the city or the director of the environment department of the city, but also to reconfirm if a university applies, there should not be expectations from the university to receive funds that the university would use to carry out a project. All the resources would be executed by the World Bank or the EIB. So if a city, for example, a university is saying, we would like to do greenhouse gas inventory for our city, if the activity is approved, either the World Bank or the EIB will mobilize staff or hire consultants to carry out the work. And a university can work on this, but that would be part of procurement process where we would ask different firms or university to apply for a specific contract.
Sorry, if I can just complement very quickly on what Augustin just said. I think, of course, research institutions and the universities are very important. They are part of what makes a project successful. So there are different ways of collaborating with the project, and also the GAP Fund will provide support to specific aspects of the project preparation, but there are other needs that can be tackled, for instance, by if the university has funding for a PhD student that can do a part of a project that is not included in the technical assistance, but whose result can be beneficial to the project. So there is a way for universities to be involved. But as Augustin said, it's very important to stress that we will not provide financing for the universities through the GAP Fund. Thank you.
Thanks. As we're asking and responding to these questions, if it's your question and you need further clarification, please do drop as a note in the chat in case you have a follow-on question. The next one related in some way, I think, is it possible for a city to submit several applications? I think Julia's nodding her head. So
yes,
maybe...
yes, definitely. So I think we have already received several applications. So some cities have submitted several projects. We will, of course, try to achieve the largest possible, the broadest possible geographical spread as well. So it is not very likely that we would support all the projects that a city submits. However, we still like to see what other projects are there, because maybe when we discuss the specificities of what the technical assistance can cover, we can find ways of putting together several projects, or doing studies that would benefit several projects. So yes, I would say submit the projects that you think are relevant for the GAP fund as per the eligibilities that we described, and then we will contact you and get through the projects together if we received multiple applications, and try to see how they can be combined or supported. Thank you.
Thanks, Giulia. So there's I guess a further question from that. If there's a network of municipalities and the project is carried out by a group of municipalities, is it submitted by the network and then the funds flow through the network as well?
We mentioned that the project can be submitted on behalf of the municipalities by an organization that represent the different municipalities. So it can be a network, it can be an association of municipalities, but again, there is no funds flowing. So that's the main important thing to remember. There is no funds flowing. And if a network of associations has a network of municipalities has a specific study that they want to carry out, that can be done. What matters is that the municipalities themselves support the application, and then the study would be carried out by the one of the implementing agencies, so either World Bank or EIB and with GIZ.
Great. So I think it's really important there to emphasize that there are no funds that flow to the applicant, and actually this is then decided by World Bank, EIB and GIZ. Thank you. How much time does it usually take to start technical assistance support once an application has been accepted?
Maybe I can take this one. So this is a very important question and a difficult one to answer, especially since we are now just starting with the project. So the best answer I can give is that it very much depends on the quality of information that we receive, on the availability as well of the city officials, how fast we can go with the detailed evaluation process. After the moment when we have decided that yes, we would support a project, then it should go relatively quickly. And by relatively quickly, I mean it's very difficult to put a number of weeks in which we can deploy the support. But the idea is that we would set up framework contracts. So once those contracts are in place, we have experts that can be deployed at relatively short notice to the cities. Of course, if during the evaluation process, the city tells us, look, we have a very important deadline, internal deadline, we would try to go to match a little bit what the expectations are, but the expectations cannot be that the moment you are accepted next week you have the consultants coming in, because we have all the procurement issues that any institution would have. However, the approval process in itself is fairly lean, and we really try to keep it as lean as possible. So I will be able to give you a better answer a year from now, when we have a bit of experience in how actually this works. But I hope that still this gives you an overview of the process. I don't know, Augustin, if you want to comment on that as well.
Yes, I think I agree with you that we will have a better idea on how fast this starts, a few months from now, when we will actually have started more technical assistance activities. My sense is that, when you apply, as I said, You can expect to hear from us in about a month from the application date. Then the interaction with you to further define the application probably will take a month. Then the grant starts really, and you have a procurement process. So I think, to be realistic, between application and really the first experts being with you in the city working on the study, at best it would be 3 months. And usually we say that the project should be somewhere between 12 and 18 months between application and conclusion of the technical assistance.
Thanks, Augustin. The questions are coming through thick and fast, so I'm going to try and just read them out so I don't miss any. I'm not going to try and put too much categorizing. So the next one I'll go to is there a prioritization of projects by the World Bank or the EIB?
I can take this one. So yes, there is a prioritization in the sense that neither the World Bank or the EIB have the resources to approve all the eligible expressions of interest. So when an expression of interest, there is an expression of interest, there is further prioritization. The main criteria for prioritization is the climate impact. So we will look for the projects with the largest climate impact. Also, the potential, the transformative nature, innovative nature of the project, and its potential for replication. And when you are a city, it's also important to show how the project that you can do in your city has the potential to also have a demonstration effect for other cities in your country. So the more involvement, the more partnership you can show with other levels of governments and other cities, that will also be a positive factor. Julia, anything to add?
No, I think you said most of what I was going to say. I just want to stress that because I think I saw something like this in the questions on the chat. So a very important point is that, of course, we are trying to create a pipeline of good and robust climate action projects in urban areas, which doesn't mean that it has to be projects that will be definitely financed by the EIB or the World Bank. We are trying to develop a pipeline of projects for all financial institutions as well. So we will not prioritize only and exclusively projects that the EIB is interested in providing investment for, and the World Bank will do the same. The idea is really to bring good projects forward.
Thank you, Julia, for anticipating the question there, which was the one I was going to go to next. So when the technical assistance is related to analysing and providing financing options, are there any specific institutions, funds, banks or financing sources towards which you are more likely to orient the project? For example, a privileged partner or pipeline to which you would like to orient the projects you support. I don't know if there's anything, I think you've been very clear, but I don't know if there's anything.
Yes, I think there is one other point that I would make to answer this question, and the fact we are talking about early stage project preparation. So what we expect is that 99%, 100% of these projects will need further technical assistance to go forward and to go to the actual feasibility stage and become bankable or investable. So what we are thinking is that we will try to develop as wide as a partnership as possible with other IFIs, city networks or other organizations that also have resources for technical assistance, and we will try to identify the best match for that specific project. We are, in a way, a few steps removed from the actual financing and the actual implementation of the project. So we will not be saying definitely, exactly as I said before, it's only EIB to finance or only World Bank to finance. And in any case, for most of the projects, IFIs, international financial institutions, they co-finance the project. So I guess if a project is well prepared, it will find funding, and of course the EIB and the World Bank would be happy to provide funding for good projects, but it's not an obligation neither from our side nor from the side of the city. So that there are not there's not strings attached that they need to take a loan from us after we finished with the TA. Thank you.
Thank you, Giulia. Augustin, anything you'd like to add to that before I move on?
No, just to reconfirm, I think, yeah, the Giulia said it well, there are no strings attached. And I think that's a very clear message that the donors have expressed, that they want good projects that can be financed by the private sector, the public sector. But so if you receive technical assistance from the World Bank Gap Fund or the EIB Gap Fund, there is no commitment from you to take any specific financing.
Great. So then moving a little bit onto sort of implementation of some of these TA projects. If it is the bank and its contractors who work and deliver the service, how do they safeguard the copyright of the projects?
Excellent question. So the copyright, so normally the EIB or the World Bank, whoever is funding the study, would have copyright on the study itself, but of course, the city will retain the right to the project, and nothing will happen to the project that the city doesn't want to happen. So I'm not a copyright specialist by all means, but we will not share the information on your project with other entities unless you specifically agree that we can do so, and we will inform you when we do so. So the information that is shared with either the EIB or the World Bank, whoever follows up, is not, will not be disseminated. For instance, if you give us previous studies that you have done, or demand studies, or issues that can be market sensitive, that information will be treated as market sensitive, and so the confidentiality, let's say, is going to be maintained. And again, we are talking about the development of studies for the project, so not the project itself. So the two questions are, I think, separated. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Giulia. Sorry,
Maybe
go ahead.
I can add to this. So when we talk about studies and reports, usually by default, we hope that all reports can be open to the public. If we talk about technical studies for a specific project, what matters is that the city itself will have the ownership of the documents, and that they can act on it as they need to then implement the project. So, for example, if you're a university applying on behalf of the municipality, do not expect to have the copyright of anything and then be turned back to the city saying, you can use this, but it's mine, so you have to give me money to use my report. This will not be your report, this will be the city's report. But I think, as Giulia mentioned, it's a very important question that I don't think we have all the answers now. So if the person who asked this question has any specific scenario in mind, please do share it with us, and it's a useful thinking to do in anticipation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It's safe to say, I think, that there's a fairly common sense approach that would go hand in hand with making sure that the information stayed with the cities. Is it possible to present a portfolio of related projects as a single project?
Yes, we have foreseen, if you remember on this, when I was talking about eligibility, we have foreseen the possibility for multi-sector or area-based investment. So let's say that the city has different investments that are related to climate mitigation, or I don't know, the definition of the solution for heat island effects in different parts of the city. So there are different schemes, but they are coherent and they are clearly related to the same objective. Then yes, we can definitely consider them within the scope. Of course, we would then need to see exactly what the technical assistance is, if it refers to multiple sectors and multiple projects, but in principle, yes, they should be submitted then.
Super. So related, I think, to eligibility, is there any specific responsibility to the city after receiving TA from the GAP fund? It could be that the project would not be a priority for the new local government afterwards. Do you consider this aspect in any way? Augustin, I don't know if you want to.
So I think the situation that is described, those things happen. I think the responsibility is more on our side to make sure that there is potential, for sustainability of the activities that we are supporting. So this is also for us a criteria for prioritization. If we see that there is a risk that the project might not be taken up, for follow-up work, then that might affect the prioritization. But there is no legal responsibility on the city side to act on the work that is done. But for us, it's an important results indicator.
Thank you. If there is a follow-up question on that particular one, please do ask in the chat. What would be the size or investment amount for a project to be eligible for financing?
Maybe I can take this one, yes. Again, it's not financing, so I think this is useful to stress. Again, it's not the financing, so we're explicitly not requesting, when you submit the expression of interest, we are explicitly not requesting the amount of investment, nor the estimated amount of TA, because we have seen in the past that it is sometimes difficult to judge this from the perspective of the city, and therefore we don't have a fixed amount of TA or a fixed investment cost, that fixed capex that needs to be achieved by the project. However, I think this comes back to what Augustin was saying before about when he was talking about the prioritization criteria, and the scale of the climate impact is of course important. So if you anticipate that the total project cost will be 1 million euros or dollars, it can be limited in terms of impact. So we don't have a fixed scale, because we want to be able to assess each proposal individually. And if we have a very good project, something that can really be transformative at the local level, or that can be a pilot for something larger to be deployed, if the pilot is successful, then we would also, of course, consider smaller projects. But bear in mind that the scale of the climate impact is indirectly linked to the scale of the investment as well. So since we're talking about urban infrastructure. So yeah.
Great.
I don't know, Augustin, do you have?
Yes, I think I completely agree with what you just said, Julia. There is no fixed number, but as a rule of thumb, if the potential investment is $1 million, that's probably a bit too small in terms of scale, because we are not providing feasibility study and preparation of the detailed designs, which would cost a certain percentage of the study. We're only doing early stage preparation, and the early stage preparation of a $1 million project might end up being a bit small. So unless it's really innovative and has a lot of application potential, we might not prioritize a project of this scale.
Thank you both. Similar question related to scale, I guess. Considering that the climate impact is one of the criteria for eligibility, is a municipality consortium project more likely to be eligible than a small city one?
I wouldn't say necessarily more likely, because it depends. It depends on the city. It depends on what is the alternative, what is the status quo, what is the level of what are the challenges that the city currently faces. However, it is true that again, for the question of scale, if, for instance, not necessarily talking about the investment amount, but the number of beneficiaries of the project is higher because it is, I don't know, a waste management project that affects several neighboring municipalities, then that will have definitely will carry more weight. But what we have been doing so far, when we have received applications that for projects that look eligible but seem to be limited in size in terms of their climate impact, is that we have suggested to the cities to perhaps check with neighboring municipalities, try to establish relationships with other cities or a bigger city next to the small one, so that we can, if not with the GAP Fund supported project, but at least in the future, we can say that it is, a pilot for a larger scale deployment. So we encourage cities to partner up when they propose something which looks pretty small in terms of the climate impact. Yeah. But they should submit it anyway, and then we can get back to them in case. So it's not an obligation to have a group of city from the start.
Thank you. Some sort of more specific questions here that I'm going to go into, a few from Argentina, colleagues in Argentina. So I would like to know what kind of assistance we can receive to design and implement an urban solid waste management plan, public education, waste segregation, separately collected and recycled waste.
Yeah, so indeed, waste management is a complex sector, and it has a lot of implications. It depends very much on what you already have, I would say. If you have done perhaps already a study of the different fractions of waste and what is more important, and you want to understand which technology or which alternative would be best suited, for instance, to help you solve the problem. This is one of the studies that, an example of study that can be covered. Or you want to identify, for instance, if you have a situation with waste pickers, for instance, on a landfill, and you want to close the landfill, and you wonder what are these people going to do, and what is the economic impact, what type of economic alternatives can we provide. So there is indeed a variety of studies that can be useful in a situation like this. The identification of stakeholders, for instance, that may or may not have a voice in the project, so may or may not be able to present their complaints or their issues with the project as it is proposed. There is not a fixed number of studies that we can provide. However, indeed, it would be a bit difficult if it is only like public education or awareness raising, for instance. That is more difficult because it's not really, it's difficult to relate it directly to the actual investment of the project. So yeah, we can discuss this. If you present in your expression of interest a list of issues that you have and a list of studies or needs for technical assistance, when the team calls you, then this is where we start discussing and adjusting the scope of the technical assistance. So don't worry too much. Try to show us that you know what the needs are, and then we'll take it from there.
Maybe just to add that, the solid waste management at the city level can be a big subject, and the city gap fund support we would expect it to be focused on really the elements that have specifically a climate impact. So if you're really trying to improve recycling and circular economy, that has a clear clear climate impact. If I shift to another sector, if you're applying for support to develop a master plan for water supply, that probably is not going to be considered eligible. On the other side, if you say, for example, I have an existing master plan and I want to update my master plan to improve energy efficiency of my water distribution network, then this would be eligible. So again, the climate focus is important.
I think a similar question here. So in the municipality, we have some projects that are a bit more robust. And in these we would like to have the possibility of a closer contact or advice from you to see what areas of opportunity we have in what we intend to carry out. It sounds like you're very open to expressions of interest that identifies need, but to open a dialogue to think about how you can then focus some of this technical assistance. Over to you, Julia and Augustin, to kind of respond. I think perhaps a very similar response.
Maybe quickly on this one. So we are also working with our partners, including GCOM, to also potentially develop this capacity to act as early sounding boards. We're not there yet, but we hope to be there soon. At this stage, I would say either you can submit an EOI, and as Julia was saying, don't worry, you can submit an EOI. If it's not eligible, we'll answer. We'll give you some feedback. We can arrange a call, or you can just submit a query saying, exactly what you said. I have a series of projects I would like to discuss with you, and we can definitely arrange a short call to have a brainstorming with you. I mean, that will depend on the level of interest. If we have 200 cities asking for brainstorming, that might become an issue. But at this level, yes, we are completely open.
And as you quite rightly say, Augustin, please use the GCOM Secretariat, the regional covenants, the national bodies as well, to kind of gauge your interest and help you kind of troubleshoot some of your questions. Sorry, Julia, did you want to come in there as well?
Oh, I think that Augustin really said it right. So it really depends on the volume. So we are working on, we're doing our best to get back to engage with all the cities or the applicants or potential applicants that request this. However, I think it's useful if you really, I mean, you can submit an expression of interest and say we have several projects, and then we can also filter it out at the stage of the evaluation, provided that, of course, as Augustin said before, the climate impact is clear, and you show us that exactly what the challenges are and when you're going, and then we can take it from there. But yes, use the query thing. We answer them as quickly as possible, indeed.
Thank you. So then the next question we'll go to is, our cities already have their GHG and climate action plans. Our weakness is the presentation of the proposals. Is this the kind of thing that the GAP Fund would support?
The presentation of the proposals, I'm assuming to finance providers. I would, if I don't read the question correctly, the person who has posted it can let us know. So one of the things that we propose is indeed to try to identify, for instance, the most appropriate financial structuring or potential partners and so on. However, I just like to stress that if you are close to the stage where your only problem is presentation, perhaps you're a bit already downstream compared to what the GAP Fund can provide. So we can provide support in identifying, let's say, arguments or studying the economic impacts, for instance, or the fiscal impacts. Or we can do a number of things. We can help you structure a business plan if that's what you need. But just be reminded that we are targeting early stage project preparation. So if you are ready to submit it to a financial institution, because you already know everything that needs to be done, and you have done all the preparation work, then probably you are a bit too downstream for the GAP fund. But as Augustin said during the presentation, there are a number of resources and facilities that can help you if you are at a later stage than what the GAP fund can cover.
But maybe, I mean, I think you can understand the question, different ways. The way I understood it is, if you have a climate action plan where you have a list of projects that are still at the ID stage, and you need help to, develop the very summary project note, and then think through how you're going to finance it with, government transfers, debt, bonds, other types of, external financing. That is exactly the type of stage where we hope we can help you really turn your climate action plan into a realistic capital investment plan with financing solutions, matching all the projects you want to implement. So yeah, if this is where you are, that is exactly where we can come in.
And equally, just to add to Julia's point, please use GCOM or other partners for kind of help and support in identifying other project preparation facilities that might be appropriate as well. So do reach out with your questions. Just a time check, we've got 15 minutes or so left. So please do send your questions through. We've got a few more that we'll run through, but just to make sure that you get yours in the last few minutes, grateful if you could send them in now. So the next one is, does the GAP fund have the ability to sign agreements with cities? In my country, resources from cities or municipalities need to be in the form of agreements in order to be implemented.
Once again, I think so yes, there will be an agreement for the provision of technical assistance. There will be it will be formalized, but we are not talking about budget resources. So again, there is no, you don't have the issue of the financing needed to flow through a certain type of entity, maybe at the regional or national level. This is not the case for the GAP fund, but there will be, I think, an agreement indeed when for the provision of experts for the specific tasks that will need to be performed, and this agreement will be signed by either the World Bank or the EIB or GIZ, as the case may be, depending on who provides the actual technical assistance.
Thanks, Julia. Augustin, did you want to comment?
Yes, maybe to complement. So so we can work directly with cities, but I think both the EIB and the World Bank, to do any activity in a specific country, we need to have the national government aware and agreeing with whatever we do. So if you're a city in any country, before we work with you, we provide the technical assistance to you, we will need to inform the national government. And if there is any objection from the national government, then actually we cannot do it. So it's always good to make sure that there is this alignment with the national governments. This does not need to be any budgetary mechanism because there is no fund of flow, but it's only a process of no objection, visto bueno, from the national government.
Thank you. So I think perhaps our penultimate question, we are an NGO that already provides technical assistance to municipalities. Does the fund finance the assistance we provide to municipalities, or does the fund assign external executors for technical assistance? I think you sort of answered this in some ways, but just so we're very clearly answering this particular question as well.
Yes, so maybe I can add to it. So both the World Bank and the EIB, we have rules on, procurement. So if an activity is required, is asked by the city, what we will do is either we will send our own experts. So that's the second option. If we hire, for example, if the city says, I would like a local NGO to help me, do capacity building and awareness program, then we will need to open a competitive process with terms of reference where different NGOs can apply. So if you're a local NGO, do not expect either the World Bank or the EIB to be able to contract you directly. If there is any contract being signed, this will be based on a competitive process.
Great, thank you. Does the GAP Fund have any training for project development?
Well, again, I'm not sure whether I understand the question correctly, but so we can provide, there is a possibility to provide support for capacity development, but what seems more difficult is to provide training for staff to develop a project. It needs to be in relation with the climate and urban project or strategy and so on. So an expression of interest that basically says we would need you to send us a trainer for our local municipality to staff to do to know how to develop projects in general. That's not, I don't think, an eligible activity for the GAP Fund. I don't know, Augustin, if you want to jump in on this one.
So if the question is, can we provide, help you in defining the project that you would like to request support for from the GAP Fund, as of now, basically this is the training. This is where we are trying to explain to you what you can ask for and how to do it. On the longer term, we hope, as I mentioned, also in partnership with GCOM, we hope to have some capacity to provide you some hand-holding in identifying the projects. So there was a question earlier, can we discuss the types of projects that we have and which one would be the good one to submit for the GAP Fund? We hope to do that soon. In the meantime, if you have a question, if you just send an email to us, we can either reply to you by email or to propose a call, hoping that can help you think through what you want to apply for.
Great, thank you. There was one final question which I'm not entirely sure about. I have asked Esteban for a little bit of clarification. I don't know if maybe you want to use the chat box, Esteban. I think it's more an assertion that the GAP Fund is there to help municipalities meet their sort of climate adaptation mitigation targets under the Paris Agreement or under sort of NDCs. But that's my interpretation. I don't know, Augustin or Julia, if you might have.
Sorry, could you repeat your interpretation, Asma?
So the GAP Fund is there to help municipalities meet targets, either NDCs or under the Paris Agreement, in terms of their climate change, urban planning ambitions.
Okay. Well, I was reading the question about laws and resolutions. Is this the same one?
Yes, that's the one.
So my understanding was, can the GAP Fund support development of policies and regulations? And the answer is yes. So for example, if you are thinking of changing urban planning regulations to increase density, promote green areas in your city, yes, this is possible. This is the type of technical assistance that we can provide. In the upstream, this can include developing strategies, but also plans and policies and regulations. Hoping this answers the question.
Julia, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, this is also how I understood the question, and indeed, it is more upstream compared to the actual pre-feasibility stage of the project. But indeed, I agree with what Augustin said. This is also part of the eligible activities of the GAP fund. Of course, it's to be seen on a case-by-case basis, but yes.
Great. I think that's all of the questions.
I saw that there were some questions from Argentina regarding the eligibility. I think.
Yes, I saw them too.
So just to clarify, Argentina. I mean, so if you have any doubt, you can go Google OECD DAC list. This is the list of recipients of development assistance established by the OECD. And Argentina is there as part of the upper middle income countries. So Argentina is part of the list. And if you have any doubt on your specific country, please check online OECD DAC list.
Great.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, just one thing, we don't, just to reiterate what Augustin said, we don't have a restriction if your country is in the upper echelon of the OECD DAC list. As long as it's on the list, it's eligible.
Great. Thank you, Julia and Augustin. I don't think there are any other questions that I might have missed. Is there anything you might like to add?
Maybe to add on the last point, I think I think in Latin America, I think Chile and Uruguay might not be on the OECD DAC list. So it's worth mentioning, as there might be participants from those countries. But again, if you have any doubt, the list is available on the OECD website.
Great. Thank you. So I think all that's left to do now is to close the session, unless there's anything else that we need to cover. I'm looking at blank faces, so we'll close the session. So really just to say thank you so much, Augustin and Julia, for your presentations. It's been really informative for me also, and I hope the attendees have enjoyed. We've had a really good turnout today, so really pleased with all of the interest, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue and the collaboration, and we look forward to a huge number of submissions of expressions of interest from the Americas. So thank you so much. And please do reach out for any questions or queries. Please use your city networks, and we look forward to connecting soon, hopefully.
Thank you very much to all the participants.
Thank you very much. This was very, very interesting for us as well. Thanks.